right. Everybody can hear me all right? Yes. All right. Excellent. My name's Aaron Kacharski. Welcome to Vote Recovery. I've been doing some work with the Recovery Advocacy Project, and our goal, sorry, I'm still letting people in here. Our goal at Recovery Advocacy Project is to think and act locally, to work to raise the voices of people in recovery, their family members, and supporters. And the idea of Vote Recovery really came about. We had a town hall meeting in May or June in Pennsylvania. And one of the attendees had asked a panel that was speaking, how close are we to having recovery be a single voter issue for people? And single voter issues are things like the environment, or you would think about guns or reproductive rights. Like those are issues that bring people out to the polls. And so the conversation that happened on that town hall was really pretty interesting. And so Recovery Advocacy Project worked to duplicate that all across the country. And this is about the 7th or 8th event that we've held across the country. We're focusing on some voters in Alaska, Hawaii, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada. I think I'm Hawaii. I think I'm missing one or two. We've kind of crisscrossed the country and focused on different regions. And when we talk to people about, so you're going to hear from voters in recovery or supporters in recovery. You're going to hear from some voters today. And then we're actually going to do some voter education because we actually built a recovery voter hub for people in recovery. And it's basically has everything you could think of. If you want to find your polling place, if you want to find out what your ballot looks like, it has registration deadlines. You can register to vote online if your state allows that. And it allows you to dive deeper into the issues that we care about as people in recovery. And we actually did some polling, some surveys on the issue of recovery and voting, and we actually asked 1,200 likely voters, and these weren't people that had, a connection to the recovery community or anything. We just asked 1,200 likely voters if they would consider switching party lines, crossing party lines to vote for a candidate that had a more attractive stance on mental health or addiction recovery. And 42% of those voters said yes. And another 28 to 30% said they would consider it. So they didn't say no. And then another 20 something percent said no. And then we took that question. And so, so that piece about recovery being a single voter issue is there's a possibility, right? Which is really exciting. And then we took that same question and we asked people in recovery that same question. We had thousands of responses, and that number shot up to over 80%. It was almost 90% of people in recovery said that they would consider crossing party lines if a candidate had a more attractive stance on mental health or addiction recovery. And then the other question we asked is, do you know where your candidate stands on those issues? And the truth came out, and 50% of us said no. And so on one hand, we're like, we would consider, voting for somebody who had a better stance on recovery. But on this end, we said, but we haven't really done the research, as voters, as a constituency. And so part of Vote Recovery is really about us doing that work and diving deep into the issues that we care about. And what a recovery voter looks like or sounds like or cares about is going to differ with every person. And that's really cool. That piece of it is really pretty awesome and unique. And so Vote Recovery is not about political party or endorsing a candidate. It is about the voter, and it's about the issue and building a constituency of consequence. And I'll share this right before I hand things off to our moderator tonight. I voted last week, and there was 5 candidates that were on the ballot that actually we went back and forth on the issues. Like we had an actual conversation about addiction recovery, mental health, and issues that I personally care about. And it all started out by me sending a note or something to their website or to their campaigns. And I used 12 words. I said, and the 12 words are, and if we can all keep these words in mind, it sounds really good when it comes out too. This is what you need to do to earn my vote. That's it. This is what you need to do to earn my vote. And if every single one of us think about that, if every single one of us looked at elections like that and was able to, forget the D and the R beside candidates' names, if you take those off, then how would we know who to vote for? And the answer is the issues. And so you're going to hear from 4 voters that are going to share about the issues that they care about, that get them involved in their community, and motivates them to cast a vote on election day. And so our moderator tonight is a good friend of mine. We met in 2014. I don't know we have been to political conventions together, both Democrat and Republican, and we actually were part of addiction recovery caucuses at political conventions, and that happened because we just had the idea to do it, and it happened. And we were able to have recovery wellness rooms in the middle of hectic political conventions, and if you can do it there, you can put recoveries anywhere. So Michael King works at the Communities Project. I've worked with him on a number of different projects before, and I'm glad he's moderating tonight. So without further ado, Michael, go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. It's really good to be here. It's really good to see you as always. It was 2015, and you do a lot of work with somebody, and it's a blast. It's really fun, but really the best way you get to know someone is when you drive with them from Cleveland to Philadelphia, and you get to just talk about all the things that a couple of guys in recovery talk about on a road trip together. So
I still have the 2 speeding tickets.
The 2 that too. That's a whole other forum though. We'll talk about that next time. But as Aaron said, folks, my name is Michael King. I am the director and creator of the Communities Project. More importantly, I'm a person in long-term recovery, which for me means I haven't had a drink, a drug, or placed a bet since February 16th of 2013. And about that time, so a little over 7.5 years ago now, almost 8 years, I was on my 3rd day of a stay at an inpatient treatment center out here. I live in Everett, Washington. There's an inpatient treatment center in Kirkland, Washington. And I walked out into the lobby, and my treatment center was hardly like a Malibu 10 grand a day kind of place. It looked like an elementary school in dire need of repair, right? And I walked out, and I picked up a copy of the Seattle Times, and front page above the fold was a big headline, and it read, "Senate Democratic Executive Under Investigation." And that was particularly problematic for me because I was the Senate Democratic executive who was under investigation. I'd spent a career in the political arena, running campaigns, running issue campaigns, helped to found a nonprofit out here in Washington State. In the depths, as my addiction spiraled completely out of control, I actually started to embezzle money from the employer that I had at the time. And I got to read all about this on the front page of the Seattle Times while I was in treatment. I got out of treatment. I decided to just put recovery first in my life. And I also recognized that I needed to and would have an opportunity to take responsibility for the things that I had done in active addiction. And 9 months into my recovery journey, I took up a temporary residence with the Washington State Department of Corrections in order to take that responsibility. And while I was incarcerated, I started to notice something. I started to notice that like 85 to 90% of these men that I was locked up with were in there for something related to addiction. It was crazy. It was, if they weren't either using or selling drugs, they were sticking up a 7-Eleven. And when you got like 2 seconds into their story, you realized they were doing it to get more money, to get more drugs. It was just everybody's story. And I just started to have this thought process like, God, given my professional background in leadership and politics and advocacy, campaigning, and this newfound passion that I had for recovery, man, if there was some way to like blend those two things together, maybe I actually could have a second shot at this life thing that I got. So I got out and I made a choice that somehow I wanted to figure out how to do that. That led me to a film called The Anonymous People. That led me to a bunch of amazing people, Aaron Kacharsky being one of them, which led me to working on the Unite to Face Addiction event back in 2015, and eventually led me to running the Communities Project. So now I get to train. I've trained nearly 2,500 folks at 70 trainings over the last 3+ years on leadership, on community organizing, all those people now going out and doing amazing things in their communities to tackle substance use. So it's a real honor to be here and to be able to sort of moderate this discussion. And one of the many, many blessings that has happened to me along the way is to get to know 3 of our 4 speakers tonight very well. And the 4th one I don't know as well, but I'm very excited to hear them speak and to get to know them better and better over time here. And the first person I want to introduce to you is actually somebody who I met, God, I'm going to say probably 3 to 4 years ago now, maybe. And that's actually State Representative Lauren Davis. Lauren is a state representative here in Washington State. She represents the 32nd district, which is like the suburbs just north of Seattle. I'm very sad to say that I'm just north of her district, so I'm not actually a constituent of hers. Maybe at this redistricting, Lauren, we can take care of that. I'll slip a note to some old friends. But Lauren has a really powerful story that got her to the front lines of these issues. And she's a dear, dear friend. And I'm really excited to introduce her to all of you so she can talk about these issues and what got her here with all of you. So Lauren, take it away.
Wonderful. Good evening, everybody. And thanks so much, Michael, for the amazing introduction. Great to be on a panel with all of these incredible people. So I was actually born into a world and a family of active addiction, the adult child now of a parent who's been in active addiction my entire life. And so addiction was not something new to me, but it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s when I first discovered recovery. And that was by way of my very best friend, whose name is Ricky. And very long story short, we were close friends since high school. I lived abroad after college for several years, moved home and found my beloved Ricky really gravely ill in the throes of very deep alcohol addiction and opioid addiction, of which I really knew nothing about either of those, despite having grown up in a home with alcoholism, and ended up essentially serving as his sort of full-time, though I had a full-time job, case manager, caregiver, trying to help him navigate the system. And over the course of several years, he was in the emergency department over 75 times. He was on life support in the ICU on 3 separate occasions. I spent both my 25th and 26th birthday at Harborview Medical Center, which is our level 1 trauma center. And he was on life support 1 year and in the psychiatric unit the following year. And it was during the course of Ricky's journey, though, that he would have the kind of these brief periods of recovery, a little sparks of hope. And we stumbled into a 12-step meeting at some point along that journey. And somebody in that meeting said, you know, you are needed, wanted, and loved in the shape and condition in which you arrive. And I was so struck by that. And, you know, I had actually just moved home from West Africa, this place where community is everything and where everyone is known and loved and needed and cherished and seen. Moved back to this country where that's not really the case. It's sort of a country of pulling into your car into your garage and shutting the door type of place. And then I landed in this room and just completely fell in love with the recovery community that day, and have spent the last 9 going on 10 years falling in love over and over again with the recovery community. And, you know, thanks to the miracle of recovery and what Ricky's story taught me about that no one has fallen too far to recover. That was 8 years ago. He had 8 years in recovery in August of this year. And really, I got to work quite busily. As soon as he got better, I got busy trying to understand everything about our state's behavioral health system and how it had almost killed him, and ended up helping to start a couple nonprofits in the behavioral health space, one in suicide prevention, and then one called the Washington Recovery Alliance, dedicated more broadly to mental health and addiction recovery. And I was down in Olympia quite a bit, our state capital, poking around on different bills related to suicide prevention, and then took a big bite or a big swing and tried to get a bill passed named after Ricky called Ricky's Law that basically required our state to create an entirely new treatment system for civil commitment or involuntary commitment for people with life-threatening addiction who are on the verge of death, and required our state to build a whole network of facilities, none of which existed, had a $57 million price tag, and everyone said, you know, hey kid, that's cute that you want to do that, but it ain't never going to happen. And I'm twice your age and have been in this field longer than you've been alive, and it's just impossible. But I believe with God or a higher power or however you name it, all things are possible. And Ricky's Law passed the state legislature in 2016, the second year we tried it. And it was one of the largest investments in addiction treatment in state history. And subsequent to that, a whole bunch of women in the legislature basically conspired to convince me to run for office against my will. And I said no and no and no and no. They say the average woman has to get asked 7 times before they say yes. And I think I was more in the 77 realm myself. But eventually I conceded that, in fact, perhaps they were correct. Perhaps I could do more from the inside than the outside, despite my dogged commitment to being a community advocate and community organizer. So I ran for office in 2018 on this recovery platform, which is a little bit of an oddity according to my consultants. You know, you're supposed to be healthcare, environment, or but that's who I am. It's why I work in public policy. And I went door to door, and I'll be darned, every third door somebody was like, you know, I've got 20 years sober, shaking my hand, you have my vote, 3 doors down, you know, this is my granddaughter and we're raising her because our daughter is living in a tent and addicted to heroin. Couple doors down from that, we lost our niece to suicide, you have our vote, over and over and over again. And it turned out when I arrived in the legislature, I guess I should say quickly, I ended up in this race against somebody that I was supposed to be the heir apparent to the seat, and was the former mayor of the largest city in the district and been on the ballot a bunch of times. And I was nobody who had moved to that town on accident, and ended up actually winning in the primary against a fellow Democrat, and then winning in the general. So just finishing my freshman term, and it's this just incredibly bipartisan issue. I think that's what's so unique about this space, and there's so much room to do so much good from all sides. Just in our own Washington State Legislature, there are 57 of us Democrats and 40 Republicans, and of the 40 Republicans, 4 of them have adult children with substance use disorder. And so it's just incredible opportunity for connection. I've been able to help their sons get into treatment with overcoming all sorts of hurdles, and built these really genuine relationships rooted actually in incredible shared pain, but also the hope to be found in the miracle of recovery. I guess just to close, I'll say, you know, the one thing that really surprised me about being in elected office is, you know, I'll be damned, like that's how we make decisions, and how much it matters who is in the room. Literally, like there's 3 people in a room or behind a curtain, like we literally have these big ass curtains on the side of the floor, and you're making these decisions. And if you know, there are 3 people there or 4 people there, and that's how it's decided if an amendment goes or doesn't go, or what it says, or how budget deals are made. And it matters incredibly who is in that room. And there's a huge difference between voting the right way, which again, this is a bipartisan issue. Actually, most people vote the right way, and prioritizing an issue, particularly when it comes to funding, which our issue for the most part, it does cost money. And it's just incredible what this community that comes with me, which is the recovery community, has been able to accomplish collectively through the 2 years, I'll say, that we've had in office. Tens of millions of dollars, an entire substance use disorder package. I got to negotiate the behavioral health budget as a freshman. You know, multiple bills. We're about to have same-day inpatient treatment pre-authorization. Insurance pre-auth in our state is going to be illegal come January because somebody decided to elect a pro-recovery lawmaker. And I would just encourage anybody who is, the Laurens out there who never thought about it and actually think it's a laughable or terrible idea, that it's actually a wonderful idea and you should strongly consider it. So thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Lauren. Lauren, I don't know, it's funny, in the whatever 4+ years I think you and I have known each other and been friends, I don't know if I've ever actually heard you speak like from start to finish like that. So it's just so, as speaking as a guy in recovery, it's so inspiring just to know that that there's such a friend of the cause, like that is sitting right there in Olympia. And I wanted to ask you, like, so you get to sit on the other end of that curtain, right? So you get to see lobbyists and advocates on any number of different issues, come to your office and talk to you and try to earn your vote, as Aaron was saying before. So if you had like one piece of advice or one thought or piece of guidance that you wanted to give recovery advocates who were going to do the same thing, what would it be? What would you want to tell them?
Sure. I mean, I hate to be trite, but the answer to that question is story. It is the thing that is so persuasive. I mean, that's the way we were able to muscle through this gargantuan Ricky's Law investment. Was we didn't have a lobbyist, we didn't have a staff person, but we had 100 people in recovery and families who buried their kid from this disease who came down and shared stories and said, my child is in an urn, or I'm in recovery and you know how much I cost in our prison system. And I mean, you'll hear that over and over, but I really mean it. And I can say now, being on the other side as a lawmaker, I remember stories. I remember constituent stories, even about stuff that's not my jam, that's not my bread and butter. I remember like this little old lady from my district story, right? About this hearing aid bill she was working on. And I remember, and it mattered to me. And I remembered when we were discussing it in caucus, oh, that's that constituent. And I remembered when I was taking my floor vote. It makes a tremendous difference. And you never know your vulnerability opening up to a lawmaker that they too have that shared pain. They may or may not choose to disclose that to you, but it creates that connection. And it's, I think, the most powerful tool that we have. If seeing is believing, make people see that people recover, show them.
Awesome. Well, let me just say before we move on that I think we all, I know I can speak on behalf of a lot of us who know you and other folks here in Washington, but we all believe a lot in you. So it's just really cool to be able to share this stage and for my presence here not being bad for your politics, as I always like to make sure and double check before I ask you to do things. So thanks a bunch, Lauren. So Lauren is amazing, folks, and just on your own accord, like follow her, track her career. She thinks she's just going to be in the state house, but that's not true. And I worked in politics for 10 years, so I know these things. So just watch Lauren and where she's going. With that, it's hard to, there's just one of the great blessings of this work, as I've said, is just getting to know the most unbelievable people. I worked on so many issues and different campaigns over the year, and I've never met folks like the folks I've met in the 5.5 years that I've been engaging on this issue. And the next person is one of those folks, and that's my very, very good friend, Kara Nelson. Kara is from Alaska, currently though studying in Redding, California. I first met Kara working on the Unite to Face Addiction rally, and I'll still remember the first time I spoke with her on the phone, and I don't know if I've ever told her the story. I might embarrass her here, but I spoke to her. And I remember getting off the phone with her, and I was with the woman I was dating at the time. And I said, I just spoke to this unbelievably powerful woman in Alaska. And Kara, you should know that for many years, I'm not with that person anymore, but you were my Alaska woman for years and years and years as a result of this powerful conversation that we had and how blown away I was. But I'm going to let Kara blow you all away on her own, because that's what she's going to do. So Kara, take it away.
Oh, wow. No, you have never shared that with me. Thank you. Wow, I'm already just so emotional. Thank you, Lauren. And other panelists. Wow, I'm just so honored and humbled to be here speaking to all of you, because all of your voices matter. You matter, you make a difference, you are the change makers. And, you know, I come from 20 years of active addiction in and out of prisons. And I never voted ever. I never even crossed my mind to vote. I never knew that my voice mattered, and I was wrong. In 2011, June 1st, 2011, I was released from prison for the last time. I didn't know it was the last time. I didn't know that was going to be my date in recovery a little over 9 years ago, but that really started this journey for me. And how it happened was my passion comes from not being very naive in the beginning, which I'm so grateful for now, because I probably wouldn't have marched forward the way that I did with so many people. You know, being in Alaska, very rural communities, I didn't even realize living in the capital of our state, how much power that I had with my lived experience. And so long story short, I came together with a group of incredibly brilliant community members who wanted to start a recovery residence for women coming out of prison. And we were bringing the solution that everyone was asking for. And when we did that, we were come against with so much opposition. That really started a journey for me. I'll never forget the first time I went into our Capitol building and was listening to our legislators speak on things that affected me personally, my children, my loved ones, and my community members. And they were so off base. And I was just so taken back by that. First of all, I live in a very small town. Our Capitol's right there. And I had no idea the decisions that were being made right there. And that really embarked me on this journey, and with others too, to speak up, show up, suit up, no matter what. And I love what Lauren was talking about. Your story is so powerful. And for myself and many of the people that I was with at the time, we were just a bunch of passionate, fiery people who had no idea what we were doing. We had no idea how government worked. I didn't know that when I talked to the House, when I talked to the Senate or whatever, that those were different things. I knew nothing, but we had this fire inside of us. Our voices mattered. And, you know, this journey that we went on with Not in My Backyard was really a platform to bring the voices and faces of recovery, to really bring voices and faces of those of us who are formerly incarcerated. Really understand what it meant to be disenfranchised for almost 10 years. You know, I did my time and I was still treated like a, you know, half a citizen, if at best. And, you know, I love what many things that have already been said, but I think for myself, you know, yes, we need to get out there and vote. Yes, we need to know what our state laws are. Yes, we need to bring in our friends and family to do the same and educate them and help them register and all the things we know what to do. Know your rights. Yet also, there's so many more layers to it. And I'm sure Tara and Anna Marie will also speak to this. You know, your voice has so much power. You matter. I cannot tell you how many legs came out from just showing up and speaking to candidates that I did not agree with on all political, you know, realms. But on this thing, we could, because you would be surprised and shocked. Maybe I was just showing up and speaking to people. And like Lauren was talking about, there is a personal story in everyone. And there's something that happens when you touch someone's spirit. You hit them right in that spot that actually matters. And that's where you change hearts and minds, you know, and it's not about a political party affiliation. It's about the issues that matter for you. For myself, it's the criminal legal system, you know, completely dismantling that, completely speaking into the actual solutions for recovery, to put specific language into different, you know, legislation for recovery support services and peer support, and like specifically cutting out pieces of legislation that talk to women who are incarcerated and girls who are incarcerated. And for my children who had to live with my felony convictions, because of the collateral consequences that I had to walk to as a single mom raising 3 kids, and all the people that are directly impacted. You know, and lucky for us today, we have folks like Mobilize Recovery and so many others that we can actually organize and unite, you know. But even back then, when we were just a bunch of crazy, powerful, fiery, like didn't know nothing people just speaking truth to power, the effects have been sustainable, even with different administrations that have come in that have different ideas of what that looks like. And even when we're stuck against, you know, a punitive system, and, you know, everything that you do matters, whether it's in that moment or down the road. You're setting a foundation when you're speaking the truth and bringing the solutions, because we are the solution. We're not waiting for a seat at the table. We're bringing our own chair and we're at that table. I can't tell you how many times I just show up places, you know, and after a while people are like, who's that crazy lady in the corner? You know, and it's literally just showing up, suiting up. And if you can't do that, there's so many other ways to support and be a part of this recovery voice and vote. And, you know, that might look like supporting people in your community who are doing that work. You know, maybe you can't speak up or speak out for employment or other reasons. There's so many ways to get through that. And so if there's anything that I can stress enough, it is your voice is so powerful. You matter. You have no idea how you give others permission. I don't care if they're the president of the United States or your friend who's houseless, right? It matters, and it moves mountains. I have seen bills pass with lobbyists spending millions of dollars, yet the power of story is what brings it across the finish line. The power of story is what hits hearts and minds. And we have to unify also as people in recovery and as people who are formerly incarcerated. You know, we have to educate each other. We have to come together. We don't have to agree on everything, but we have to agree on these things, because we have to smash the stigma. We've buried too many people. We've buried too many people. I am not someone who is super qualified to do anything. I'm just bringing myself, and I found that is enough. Now, I didn't know that back then. I still did it, scared, so scared all the time, sweating, didn't know what was going to come out of my mouth. Yet I showed up and I supported others who did as well. Your vote matters, your voice matters. Even if you're disenfranchised, there are still ways that you can make change. Personally, I didn't want to run for office. I was asked several times too, and let me tell you, I'm like, I will influence and I will support those that are, and I am just so humbled to be on this panel. Tara and Lauren are, you know, just incredible women that just like blow my mind at just the reaching that they're able to do, and the courage and the boldness and the integrity that it takes. It's not easy, but it's so worth it. You don't know what your decision is doing to save lives, people you will never meet. Just like I'm speaking right now, I'm sure there's someone right now who's inspired to know. You know that your voice not just matters, I'm talking local, community, statewide, federally. I've personally seen it in my own life. I've personally walked through it with many people that I had no clue that I had the power to do that. And I'm telling you, I'm giving you permission right now. You do have the power. You are the power. You are the solution. So thank you everyone for being here. It's very important.
Kara, I just want to refer you to the chat really quick, because I think a draft Nelson movement is slowly emerging. So you created that result, so you're going to have to just face that one. Kara, thanks so much. It's always so good to hear from you. And you talked about Lauren's inspiration, and I think that you have plenty of that in your own cup yourself. So folks, with that, I do want to move forward to our next speaker here. And we jokingly refer to ourselves as brother and sister oftentimes when we communicate, and that's my dear friend and soon to be Representative-elect Tara Simmons. Not to tempt fate or anything, but I think I feel pretty confident. And about actually, it was 3 years ago, and I can tell you exactly the moment when I was first told about Tara, because I was with Aaron Kaczarski when it happened. Aaron Kaczarski and I were in Boise, Idaho together, where the first Communities Project training was held, and I got a tweet from a gentleman who was the president of the Machinists Union local here in Washington State. He's now the president of our state labor council. I hadn't talked to him in years. I was thrilled to hear from him. And he said, I really want you to meet this woman who is doing this work with formerly incarcerated folks. She's in recovery too, and I've been following your stuff. So I want you to connect with her, and her name is Tara Simmons. And we did. And I remember the first time we chatted, because I was like in rush hour traffic, and I would have been grumpy had it not been for Tara on the other end of the phone and connecting with this unbelievable person. I think unbeknownst to both of us, we ended up getting accepted together into a leadership development cohort, the one that Kara was part of as well, not even knowing that I think either one of us was applying, and we just happened to be a part of it. And Tara has become an incredibly dear friend, and it was incredibly exciting, and is, we believe, soon to be the first formerly incarcerated member of the Washington State Legislature in history. So with that, I want to introduce my sister and a dear friend, Tara Simmons.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael, my brother. And it's so wonderful to be here with all of you, and especially my dear sisters too, Kara and Lauren Davis. You know, Lauren and I are kind of like soul sisters though, because like our stories are so similar. In fact, every time we talk, it's like, oh my gosh, that is my experience too. And that's my experience throughout this entire process of where I am today. It's just been the recovery community that has lifted me up and helped me get here, and people like Kara and Michael and Lauren. And it's just, yeah, I'm just humbled and honored to be here. But, you know, my story is like so many other people in recovery. I just celebrated 9 years in recovery on September 30th, and I'm very grateful for that. It's like the biggest gift of my life, you know. But my story, you know, started with generations of every single person in my family suffering with substance use disorder and being incarcerated. I was in foster care. I grew up in public housing, on food stamps. I was, you know, ran away from home at 13 years old and was trafficked as a young girl. I first became a mom. I got pregnant at 14 years old. I was homeless and living on the streets. And, you know, those adverse childhood experiences, in my opinion, and probably research and data shows, you know, leads to outcomes of, you know, untreated trauma, substance use disorder, and in my experience, incarceration in prison. And so, you know, I did have some periods where people helped me, and I had, you know, years where I was kind of functioning and doing well. I was the first person in my entire family to graduate from high school. And I did that as a 16-year-old mother. And somebody randomly told me about community college, and that I could actually get financial aid and buy my son some shoes, and not just live on my $400 a month welfare check if I went to college. And so I did, and I went to community college, and I became a registered nurse. And I thought I had kind of escaped, you know, the trajectory that my, you know, my family would put me on, like, you know, first person to graduate high school, first person to go to college. I was a nurse by the time I was 21 years old, but I never really dealt with all of the underlying trauma from my childhood. And so I, you know, I would choose unhealthy relationships. I didn't know boundaries. I was a survivor of domestic violence. And in each of those circumstances, I would turn to something else to numb the pain. And eventually that turning to something else led to serious consequences where I landed in prison. And so when I was in prison, it was the first time I was ever exposed to 12-step recovery programs ever in my life. Nobody in my family had ever achieved recovery. And so I'm so grateful for recovery programs that come into prisons and bring that message of hope and share that experience, because that's where I was first introduced to 12-step programs. And so, you know, during prison, I really worked the steps and tried to and addressed and found out like all the shame I was carrying for my entire life didn't belong to me, and that I could recover and that I wasn't, I didn't need to be isolated anymore, that, there was other people that had these same issues. And so I really leaned into my recovery while I was in prison for 2 years and did all that internal healing work. But I didn't know what I was going to be able to do to get a job. Now I have this, incredible 6 felonies on my record. How was I going to be able to make enough money to provide for my children? And I got out of prison and I started working at a fast food restaurant, and the state was
Tara, I think you've just frozen up on us there. Is that on everybody's end, Aaron?
garnishing court funding or anything. Am I back? Uh-oh.
You
Am
are
I
back now, Tara. Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
you are
Okay.
back.
So I got out of prison and I was working at a fast food restaurant, and they were garnishing my paycheck and to pay back court fines. And I wasn't going to be able to provide for my children on such limited money. And so I thought to myself, this is what really scared me to really make some big decisions. I was thinking to myself, okay, this time I will just sell drugs, but I won't do them, right? Because that's the only way I'm going to be able to like get enough money to provide for my kids. But the thought of being separated from my children again and going back to prison was more than I could bear. And I said, that's not an option for me. I'll get caught because I'm not a good criminal, and and I'll end up back in prison. And so I decided I was going to go to law school and figure out how to change the system, because it wasn't just me, it was everybody in my recovery community that was struggling with the discrimination based on our past in housing and employment and these court fines and all these other issues. And so I decided I was going to go to law school, and I did. About 16 months after I was released from prison, I started law school, and I took every opportunity I could during law school. I started a nonprofit that is led by and for formerly incarcerated people working on criminal justice reform. I got appointed by the governor to state level advocacy boards. I started going down to Olympia and drafting legislation and building coalitions and seeing, and organizing. And I went to graduate from law school, which I did in 2017. And again, the Bar Association told me I could not sit for the bar exam and become an attorney because of my past. And, I was so fortunate that I had so many friends that I had made along my journey, people in the recovery community, people in my faith community, lawyers, prosecutors, law professors, and everybody organized, and we appealed to the state Supreme Court. And I won in a historic decision on the same day they heard the case unanimously. All 9 justices allowed me to sit for the bar exam and become an attorney. And, during that time, I had also, I just never wanted to be an exception to the rule. I wanted to use my story to make my success the rule. And I wanted to make sure that everybody had hope and opportunity despite our past. And so during that time, I met several legislators also. And one of them happened to be Representative Sherry Appleton. And she became a dear friend and mentor to me. And she says to me, I need to retire, Tara. I'm 77 years old, and I'm not going to retire unless you decide that you'll run in my place. And it's so funny because Representative Lauren Davis, also had the same kind of situation where she had this longtime woman who had held the seat and was highly respected and mentored her. And Lauren had built a nonprofit. She came from an organizing background, just really mission driven. And so that's where I'm at right now. I am running for office and hope to become the first formerly incarcerated legislator in our state's history. We think probably the nation. I don't know of anybody else who's actually done time in prison across the nation who is a state representative or senator. I've been really impressed. Also, I'm running as a Democrat, and I'll tell you, every day Republicans reach out to me on my Facebook Messenger and tell me, I'm a Republican, and I know you're probably not, and we're not aligned on taxes, or we're not aligned on, whatever, but I am voting for you because my nephew or my niece or my son or my daughter or, has suffered in the same ways. And I know that you're going to prioritize recovery and criminal justice reform and make sure that everyone has a second chance. And, to tell you the truth, the reason I'm running is because I don't just want to focus on this anymore. I could do this in my nonprofit. I really want to make sure people have a first chance. I know the stories of what leads to substance use disorder. It is overwhelmingly linked to adverse childhood experiences and trauma. And I think if we support families on the front end, we will not need to incarcerate people later on in life. It starts in our education system, in our healthcare system. There's so many places that I want to work and be supportive and build coalitions within the legislature and find my own little area of expertise, but help everybody else and be a team player and really create a healthy society for all of us to succeed from the front end. So I am so grateful to be here tonight with some of my dearest friends who, running for office has not been easy as a person with high trauma history, and they're using my past, negatively against me. And it's difficult, but I have friends, and it's in the rooms, it's in recovery community where I know people will not judge or stigmatize me and will have my back and pick me up when I'm having bad days. And so it is an honor to meet all of you and share with you my story. And I hope all of you are voting not just voting, but getting to know your representatives and your city council people, and keep elevating and amplifying the need for recovery and the need for second chances, because that's how we make change. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tara. I'm sitting here getting misty-eyed listening to all of these amazing people. And I was just thinking to myself, just how powerful the experience is that we get to have when we step into this community and not just get engaged in the political process, get engaged in voting and becoming aware, but just the people that we get to meet and these stories. Lauren alluded to it, Kara shared her story, and then Tara coming around. It's unbelievable. So I'm just so grateful for the three of you. Now, I will say we have one more speaker, and I'm a little embarrassed that I have a bit of a personal journey with our first three. I don't with our fourth. However, I have nothing but high regard for anybody who spends as much time with Aaron Kaczarski or Garrett Haight or Ryan Hampton or Sean O'Donnell or any of those folks down in Las Vegas. And that's Ana Maria Hernandez, who does work with the Recovery Advocacy Project directly. So Ana Maria, I want to turn the floor over to you, and I'm eager to hear a little bit about you now, since I don't know you as well.
Thank you, Michael, and hello, everybody. I feel very honored and to be sharing this panel with all of you. I feel very inspired, so I know that everybody else is too. So like Michael mentioned, my name is Ana Maria, and I am actually the field director of Recovery Advocacy Project here in Nevada. I am not a person in long-term recovery myself, but I do very much feel a part of the recovery community. So my journey is a little different from all of our other panelists. I first got into advocacy, or rather, I really fell kind of backwards into it purely by circumstance when I immigrated to this country with my family when I was just 10 years old. And what happened is that I learned the language very, very quickly, while my parents did not. So I kind of became my family's designated mouth, eyes, and ears. I was just 11 years old, and I very vividly remember translating and interpreting the mortgage closing papers for my family and the realtor. I remember interpreting at all of the doctor's visits. I even remember arguing at a lawyer's office on behalf of my family. And even though I was just a kid, I actually got so good at it that every time one of my parents' friends needed any help or something important done, my parents always volunteered me to do it. And well, now I realize that those were kind of really big responsibilities for a child. I really liked it, and I really enjoyed contributing to other people's progress in their life. I liked that people had such a positive reaction to somebody being able to stand up for them and to advocate for them. And that really impacted how I saw the way I wanted to live my life. So everything started very simple for me, just helping out people that didn't know how to use their voices or couldn't, to me starting to volunteer for different organizations that were important for me, to even going to college for political science, and then working for different advocacy groups after I graduated. But alas, even though my entire life had been dedicated to championing the message of recovery advocacy or of advocacy groups, I got in around my late 20s, I got very, very, very burnt out from it because advocacy isn't always easy. And at that point in my life, I decided to take a step back from all sorts of advocacy. And I went to work for a financial firm. I decided to explore other options. And it was at this financial firm that I actually met and fell in love with my boyfriend, Nicholas. Um, so Nicholas was a person in long-term recovery for years prior to us meeting, and he was very active in his sobriety, and it really made him so happy. He was all about health and happiness, and it was very inspiring for me to watch someone who had gone through the depths of hell to be so happy and grateful about the healthy lifestyle that he had finally been able to find. I always supported him and showed up for him for everything that he did. And he was always very open and honest with me and sharing his life experiences with me. So I came to believe that I had a pretty good handle on what recovery from substance use was like. He would speak to me, and because I understood the meaning of the words that he was talking at me, I thought that I actually understood what he meant by them. Um, Unfortunately, I didn't find out that I was in uncharted waters until I found him disease from an overdose on the floor of her house. And it was only at that precise moment in my life that everything that he had tried to tell me for such a long time actually started making sense to me. Everything that I thought I had understood before now actually made very real sense. So I may not be a person in long-term recovery myself, but I have definitely gone through my own recovery process. I have developed my own set of recovery principles that help guide my life on a day-to-day basis today. I have found community with people who don't judge me or stigmatize my deceased boyfriend because of the challenges that he was up against, and people that don't stigmatize or judge me for my own emotional and mental health struggles. I feel very accepted by everyone that is in the recovery community. And I think that it's because I have felt that pain that many of you in this phone call have felt. I have dealt with some of that grief. And some years past, I think that I have really come out stronger and better because of it. For Nicholas, his recovery was all about health and happiness and wellness. And after a lot of therapy and my own experiences, I have realized that that's what recovery means to me as well. Is to be able to lead a life full of health and happiness in community with others that are also, thriving in their health and happiness. So that's why I'm a recovery voter today. Because I want to use my voice to help bring about systemic change that is going to lead to more and more people achieving that health and happiness that I now feel like I do understand. Like everyone here has said, our voices are very, very powerful and they carry a lot more weight when we use them together. So I encourage everyone in this phone call to stand up for recovery, and whether that means speaking to your very close friends and families about what recovery means to you, whether that means educating your legislators about what they can do to be better to the recovery community. It's all about using our voices and all standing up together so that we can, progress our community forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna Maria. And I think, God, the four of you are just so unbelievable. And I could go on and on, but Aaron is giving me an eye like we're running behind on time. So I'm going to kick it over to Aaron. I know your eye. I've known you long enough.
Doing anything.
There's an eye. There's an eye. I know your eye.
All right. Michael, thank you very much for moderating tonight. And to our four speakers, that was amazing. And we're talking to Garrett before we started doing these vote recovery meetings across the country, and we had this conversation where we were saying, you know how like you're in a meeting and like you don't get it, or you're like in recovery, you don't get it, you don't quite get it, you don't quite get it, and then somebody says something and you're like, oh, I get it. And like we wanted to like have that, like, but for voting, like where, like the like somebody could just be like, my voice doesn't matter, my voice doesn't matter, nothing makes a difference. But to hear these recovery voters across the country share what they shared, whether they're running for office or they're first time voters or they got their voting rights restored, has been amazing. Where and we have, and I see the comment section in the chat box where people are like, I get it, like our voices do matter, and so thank you so much for the recovery voters that spoke tonight. If you want to make your own like 30 to 60-second video clip of why you want to vote recovery, you just go to voterecoveryvideo.com and you can make your own clip, and we're doing some get out the vote work with that. And so it's voterecovery.com. And I'm going to take you all through, I mentioned that we built a voter hub. I'm putting the address of it in the chat box right now. It's recoveryvoices.com/vote. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go through it for the next 5 or 10 minutes. Just because, part of this is about all of you and all of us kind of like digging in and digging in on the issues that we care about. And so I'm going to share my screen for a second. And so this is recoveryvoices.com/vote. I need to stop my video so that it will work better. But you all can hear me, right? You all can,
Yep,
okay.
you're good.
You can see the screen? Very good.
Yep.
All right, and so this is recoveryvoices.com/vote. We created this for people in recovery. Anybody can really use it, but it really comes down to that third sentence there. We can either imagine a world in which our elected officials court and value the votes, suggestions, and voices of us in the recovery community, or we can make it a reality. And this is about making it a reality and showing that we're organized. And so you can come here to recoveryvoices.com/vote. And there's this 4-step sort of program. It talks about what vote recovery is. It's an intentional effort to build the grassroots voting power of the recovery community. The first step, determine how recovery is going to influence you on your own personal decision in the voting booth. I talked a little bit about some of the poll numbers and the surveys that we had, and you can come here and you can look at some of the surveys. You can look at all the data. Just give this a second here. It talks about single voter issues, right? And then you can actually go down and look at all of the survey data, and you can actually use this when you're talking to candidates, when you're talking to elected officials. You can talk about these issues. You can even take this survey yourself on the website, and there should be another graphic here. Some of it's taking a little while to load just because I got Zoom going at the same time. But all of those issues are there for you to read through. And then you go to step 2 here. And this is my favorite piece right here, because an educated voter is a powerful voter, right? And there's all these different issues that we care about in recovery or supporters of recovery, whether it be Medicaid expansion, overdose prevention, ending the war on drugs, race issues, homelessness, ending mass incarceration. And you can come here, and each of you can kind of dive into this website. You click on recovery vote issue education, and you can go through and really kind of do your own research. Sorry, my computer's taking a little while. It's with the Zoom at the same time, it's making it a little slow. Give me a second. Okay. And so you can come here if you want to learn more about, criminal justice reform. You just click on criminal justice reform. Around racial equity, click on racial equity, affordable housing, veterans affairs, ending mass incarceration, mental health, insurance discrimination. A number of our speakers talked about some of these issues tonight. You can come here, and even if you wanted to talk to local candidates, but you wanted to do some research first, you can come here and dive deeper into that. All right. And then step 3 on this site here. You can educate yourself on those who are running for office and where they stand. Learn about your candidates. You can actually come here, put in your zip code. It'll tell you everybody who's running, everybody that's going to be on your ballot. It'll have sample ballots. You can come here to look for your polling location. It's got all the voting deadlines on it. And this one right here, I didn't, for a long time, I didn't know the difference, between like a U.S. senator and a state senator, right? Or a mayor, and I didn't know what the city council did or the sheriff's office did. So, part of Recovery Advocacy Project is about thinking and acting locally. And so for all of us to take some time and to look through this, learn about the responsibilities of the judges, of the sheriff, of the mayor. If we're having a zoning board issue and we're trying to open up a recovery house, like I'm probably not going to like write a letter to the president of the United States, right? And so it's important for us to learn about these local candidates and offices that people run for. And then the last piece here, just vote, right? You can come here, voters tools. It's got some voter tools that pop up. You can register to vote as long as your state allows for online voter registration. You can do it right from the site. You can check your voter status if you're not sure if you're registered or if you moved. You learn about absentee and early voting. You can learn about where your election offices are, find your polling place, deadlines. There's a vote recovery pledge that you can come here, and the vote recovery pledge is just to keep recovery in mind when you go to the polls, and also work to encourage other people to register to vote. There's one more thing on the website I wanted to show here, this voters' rights section, and you can come here and just really explore this. It's recoveryvoices.com/vote. We've heard a lot about voter restoration. There's a whole page on this where you can look all that stuff up state by state. If you get turned away at the polls on election day or intimidated at the polls, there are places where you can report violations. We have that here for you as well. And then learning more about voter suppression, because just like, there's groups that are encouraging people to vote. There are people that are out there that are trying to suppress your vote. And so coming here and learning about all of that is really important. There's just a ton of stuff on this website, and I hope that you all take some time to dive deeper in that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is we're having a national rally the Sunday before Election Day. So that's November 1st. And I'll put the registration in the chat. So we're going to kind of take all the vote recovery meetings from across the country and work to have everybody come on that Sunday. So it's recoveryvoices.com/rally. And so the two websites we'd love for you to go to is www.recoveryvoices.com/vote for the voter hub, and recoveryvoices.com/rally to register for the national rally That's going to be Sunday, November 1st. You know, I know some of you might have voted already, early voted. Congratulations, that's awesome. If you're ineligible for some reason, there are groups and organizations and advocates here that will fight with you for voter restoration rights, no matter what state you're in. And that's something that is, I moved down to South Carolina, and like every single state has different voting laws, and so that's why that website, the Vote Recovery website, is important, because there's a lot of it where you can look things up by your zip code, by your state, so you can get familiar with all the laws in your area. So I wanted to just turn things over to Michael to see if he had anything else to say, but I wanted to thank all of our speakers, and this has been one of the more inspiring vote recovery events we've had. We've had a lot of good speakers at these events, and a lot of them I've been seeing for the first time, which is amazing. So to the 4 recovery voters that shared earlier, thank you so much. You're an inspiration. And then I just wanted to turn things over to Michael if you wanted to have anything else to say.
Yes, thank you, Aaron, and thank you, everybody. And I just want to personally thank Anna Maria and Lauren and Tara and Kara again. And I just want to end really quickly to you all that earlier today, I went out to my mailbox and my ballot. In Washington State, we only vote by mail. And my ballot came in the mail, and I came home, and my kids were still doing homeschool stuff. And I held up my ballot and said, look what came today. And the sheer joy and excitement on their faces was the best part of my day, just to think of how cool it seemed that my 11 and 7-year-old were so excited by the prospect of voting. And we voted tonight, and we bubbled in, went back and forth on who got to bubble each thing and so on and so forth. But I was inspired by that, and I hope that you all can be as well, to turn out and be part of the process. And the noise in the background is one of those children right now as well. So with that, I'm going to say goodnight to everybody, and thank you so much for being here, and get out and vote and participate in the process.
Awesome.
Thank you, Aaron, for the opportunity.
Thank you all. You guys are great. Thank you. Good night.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.